Here's a couple notes on aligning a vehicle to the coordinate system in Geomagic Design X. So I've got a pre-runner chassis and body here. And if I show my origin, you can see it's way off out there in space. None of the system planes have any um, relativity to kind of reality here. So it's totally unaligned. The idea is that we're going to find a center line of the vehicle using one of a couple different means. Then we're either going to use the floor or the ground as a secondary datum where we can find maybe some axle center points or center lines potentially to help us find that. And then we can talk about how to potentially figure out where to go front and rear, how to orient, use the scan data to orient the vehicle front to rear that way. So let's start with the center line though. There are a couple of ways to do this. I'm not going to region group this model because there's just a lot of data here that's going to be kind of inefficient. So I'm going to go straight into the add plane command. And the simplest way of doing this is if I have a feature on one side of this that I can extract to a plane and it's got a mirror feature on the other side, for example, like this guy here, if I'll grab my smart selection tool, click and hold the mouse button down to drag up and expand my selection around this trailing arm until I get something that I can extract. We can use a little bit of statistics and a couple of other things to filter that data, get a good quality planar fit, and we can constrain that access to another existing feature, which I'm going to disable right now. Hit the preview button there, and you can see in orange I get a plane fit to all of that data. So I've got the lock button enabled here, and I'll accept that first plane. Go ahead and move over to this other feature and repeat that same process. So I've got a plane now built from both the driver and passenger side of the vehicle, the suspension there. And then I can choose a different option here, the average plane, and select each one of those reference planes. And you can see when I do that, my preview here is now the orange plane right down basically the center of the vehicle. So not perfectly down the center line of the Toyota logo, but pretty close. And so we're off by, I don't know, 20 millimeters or so there. So we're pretty close. So I can accept that and use that as my center line. Or what I could also do is we can use a mirror option here. And mirror is going to require me to already have an existing plane that already kind of gets close to splitting the part in two. If I don't have one, like I've already created one here, obviously, but if I don't have one of those, I can create a draw line plane, for example. I'll go ahead and hide the couple planes that I've created so far so we can just focus on this one and actually hide the system planes as well. So, for example, I could use the draw line tool, which creates a plane using the view direction, and I deliberately created that one poorly because I'm going to use that and I'm going to pair that with the mirror function here. So select that guy and pair that with a mesh selection. Now I could, first of all, I could hold the control key down to select the entire mesh there, but I know that I've got a bunch of this ground, and that ground is going to corrupt my results. So really what I want to do is select as much stuff in my mesh that I know is actually mirrored on the part. Don't know how quality the scans of the tires are, so for example, if I want to skip anything, what I can do is grab like a lasso selection tool and select through everything. And instead of selecting the entire guy, I can go ahead and just hit the delete key there, and I can, with the shift key held down now, select whatever of the scan I want. If I want to deselect, I can hold the control key down, for example, and just get rid of some of these tires here. And when I hit preview, you can see versus the initial guess plane that I gave it, it will give me something that looks a lot closer to a mirror plane. So it's really just doing a center of mass calculation. It's just trying to find a location that has equal numbers of triangles on one side of that plane versus the other, and that gives me something that's almost identical actually to the initial plane that I created from, which was this guy here. Using the trailing arms there. So there's two different methods to align, to find a center line plane rather. of the vehicle. Now, for basically like the Z here, right? Obviously, we could use that same method, that extract method, to select the floor, for example, and that could create a, just another best fit plane using that data, and that could be a secondary datum. If I wanted to do something maybe involving like the axles or something like that, if I had axles on this, I don't have any scans of the axle, unfortunately. I could create some other reference geometry from that, like extract the center line axis using the vector command, and then I could create a plane from the two vectors there. A couple other options for doing that. Let me know if you have any other thoughts that I didn't cover. And then as far as front to back of the vehicle, probably the easiest thing to do is if I have a plane or if I have any other reference geometry that kind of shows what that front to back is, like if I create, for example, a sketch on one of these planes here, uh, sorry, sketch, just do a sketch on, oops, doing a sketch on this plane here. I can kind of get a silhouette of the whole thing if I want to. That might be a silly idea right now with as much data as there is, but it kind of gives me some reference points to work off of. And then when I go into the sketch mode, so we have this. So, I can potentially follow like the bed line, maybe. You can see the cross section actually does trace that as is. I can even extend that to the door line, right? So I can use that as a vector. Actually, it doesn't look like they're on the exact same line, so we'll just use this. So I can also use that as a alignment artifact, essentially, in the interactive alignment. So we can show a couple of those options. But what I wanted to use it for here, since I have kind of a front to back direction extracted now, I can create a point or a plane. We'll do a plane for simplicity here. At the extreme position of this mesh in the direction of that line that I selected there. And you can see a little arrow goes here to show which direction we're going to find that plane, normal to that axis that I created there. And so when I do that here, you can see it finds the floor in that direction, unfortunately. So we may need to scale that back. And instead of doing the entire mesh, we can, again, just do a selection like we did before. So if I want it to be somewhere on the, the tube chassis work just outside of that tire there, of course, I should probably turn, or the spare tire there, turn off my, or select through, rather, and again, in that same direction, now I have to the very maximum point on that tube in that direction, I have a plane. And so once I have all of my alignment features there, then we go to the interactive alignment either on the home tab or on the alignment tab here. So interactive alignment, choose what is moving. If we want any of those reference geometries to follow the scan, we can try and select them here. No guarantees that all of them will be able to work depending on how the geometry is selected. But what we can do is say, all right, well, one of these two planes here, which are my two center line planes, is going to be my primary datum. My vector, I don't need to have something that's only a vector selectable, so I can select a second plane there. And you can see as I'm doing this selection, I'm locking down my degrees of freedom. So now I only have 1 degree of freedom left, so my position could be that third plane there. And you can see a preview of the alignment relative to the coordinate system here, showing me that my normal vectors for a couple of things are flipped. So if I flip that, for example, you can see now based on the coordinate system at the very back of the vehicle, I've got Y going up, Z coming out, X going out that way. I could also choose to do X, Y, Z instead, which would accept a reference point and then either a couple planes or a couple axes or a combination of both for the X, Y, and Z. If you wanted to control exactly what is Z up and X out and Y up or whatever it is that way, because the convention for this is not the easiest thing to follow up. It actually creates a reference plane um, using Y up first, depending on how you have your preferences set up. So I don't think I can even go into that while I'm in a command. Yeah, I can't. So, anyways, I hope you found that interesting, and let us know if you have any comments or any other requests for different places to put a coordinate system location using that data.